Deep in a rocky canyon, a blinding flash of light cuts through the air as the masked assassin stands ready. As the legendary assassin king of the righteous Heavenly Alliance, he faces a massive horde of purple-robed pursuers. Coldly declaring that he is busy, he tells them to bring it on all together. Angered by his sheer confidence, the martial artists charge forward with their swords and spears raised, but Hajin is a force of nature. He effortlessly weaves through the attackers, delivering lethal, fluid slashes that paint the canyon walls with blood. As he grips his sword hilt, he reflects on the endless cycle of slaughter, unleashing a powerful horizontal strike that cuts down multiple enemies in a single motion. The remaining pursuers desperately try to rally, shouting that they only have one opponent left, but Hajin is driven by a singular, burning desire, the freedom he has craved after 30 years of servitude. With a fierce glare, he leaps forward and executes a lightning-fast zigzag slash, instantly decimating a whole line of enemies in a burst of light. As he sprints forward, the remaining pursuers cross their blades to block his path. In a display of jaw-dropping agility, Hajin steps directly onto their crossed swords, using them as a platform to launch himself high into the air. The enemies look up in absolute terror, realizing they are facing one of the top 10 strongest martial masters in the world. Descending from the sky, Hajin slams his sword into the canyon floor, unleashing a devastating shockwave that shatters the earth. The massive explosion leaves a giant crater littered with fallen enemies. Standing in the center, Hajin breathes heavily, leaning on his sword as exhaustion threatens to overwhelm him. Yet, more pursuers arrive, shouting that the Assassin King is at his limit. Looking down at his chipped, bloodied blade, Hajin grits his teeth. His eyes glow with a desperate blue energy as he prepares for another clash. Unleashing a massive, circular shockwave of energy, he blows away dozens of enemies before retreating into the night. As he walks away, dragging his blood-dripping sword, he is haunted by the mocking voices of his past, reminding him that he was just a soulless hunting dog whose life is filled with death. The passage of time brings us to an older, unmasked Chun Hajin. Now sporting long white hair, he coughs up a pool of blood in a dark forest, clutching a severe wound on his side. Collapsing to his knees, he wipes his mouth and grits his teeth. He spent his entire life as a dog for the righteous Heavenly Alliance, and now that he has finally cut those ropes, he refuses to die. Using his sword to steady himself, he leaps through the dark forest, desperately heading toward a secret place nearby where he has hidden elixirs and herbs to heal his wounds. Exhausted, Hajin collapses onto his back in a quiet clearing. His body is screaming not just from his injuries, but from extreme hunger, having survived on nothing but a few pieces of beef jerky for 7 days. Looking up at the full moon, he weakly mutters about wanting to eat dumplings. Suddenly, a shadow leaps across the moon, shattering his brief moment of peace. A powerful sword strike crashes down, obliterating the ground. Hajin barely dodges, shocked that someone possessed a stealth technique skillful enough to bypass his senses. His attacker is a masked figure wearing a straw hat. They clash in midair, exchanging rapid, high-speed strikes. The attacker then unleashes a colossal vertical beam of sword aura that slices clean through the massive forest trees. As the masked figure lands with glowing purple eyes, Hajin recognizes the technique. He identifies his opponent as the Death Lord, the strongest assassin of the southern Central Plains, sent by the Steel King's 8 elites of the Steel Blood Fortress. Hajin tries to taunt the Death Lord, questioning if the Murim would ever respect him for cutting down an already exhausted master, but the provocation only angers the assassin. The Death Lord unleashes a swift, curved slash. Sparks fly as Hajin barely blocks the incredibly fast strike, but the sheer force blows him backward. Blood sprays from his wounds as Hajin stumbles away through the dark forest path. Behind him, the Death Lord stands catching his breath, his sword dripping with blood. Sensing a hidden presence, the Death Lord demands that the onlooker reveal themselves. In response, a bright pink, glowing energy manifests, revealing a beautiful woman in elegant white and pink robes. The Death Lord reacts with shock and anger, recognizing her as the secret demon queen. Smiling sinisterly, she greets Hajin, noting that it has been 6 years since they last met. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the dark canyon under the full moon. A group of riders from the righteous Heavenly Alliance discovers the battlefield littered with corpses. A young scout inspects a body bearing a tiger emblem and reports to the first elder, Jung Il-ryong. The white-haired elder looks on grimly, acknowledging that Chun Hajin truly lived up to his title as the Assassin King by escaping their net and slaughtering the Steel Blood Fortress masters. Raising his hand, Jung Il-ryong commands his kneeling soldiers to track the distinct death energy of the secret demon queen, knowing it will lead them directly to the severely wounded Chun Hajin. Meanwhile, Hajin remains cornered in the forest by both the Death Lord and in the dark forest. Chun Hajin stares in absolute shock as a blinding pink aura illuminates the clearing. Standing before him is the secret demon queen, Kwak Sokyo. Despite her elegant white and pink robes and youthful appearance, Hajin knows the terrifying truth. She is a sadistic, 60-year-old master murderer using a rejuvenation technique, and the fact that the Steel Blood Fortress hired her proves just how desperate they are to capture him. Gripping his blood-stained sword, Hajin refuses to back down. The queen sighs, mockingly disappointed that he would draw his weapon so quickly when they have such a special history. But Hajin isn't interested in reminiscing. Channeling his remaining blue internal energy into his blade, he deliberately provokes her, asking why he should be afraid of a 60-year-old grandma who only knows how to talk. The insult hits its mark. The queen's face contorts in pure rage, and she threatens to rip out his spine if he says it again. Unfazed, Hajin repeats the insult just to bait her. Forcing a chilling, sinister smile, the queen suppresses her anger. As she extends her long, sharp, pink glowing claws, she senses something unexpected. Hajin's core energy is disgustingly pure, proving he has mastered the hidden martial arts of the Great Nine Sects. Her eyes immediately light up with greed. Hajin quickly pieces together her true motive. She isn't stalling to capture him for the Steel Blood Fortress. She wants to steal the Nine Sects' martial secrets for herself. Mockingly admitting her disloyalty, the queen proposes a deal. If Hajin hands over the secrets, she will let him live. Hajin clicks his tongue in disgust at her treacherous nature, pointing out that the deal is worthless anyway. He is already marked for death by the Righteous Heavenly Alliance's blood parasite, a horrific centipede-like creature wrapped around his heart that guarantees a gruesome end for any betrayer. Hearing this, the queen smugly offers to use her mastery of demonic arts and poisons to extract the parasite, believing she now holds absolute leverage over his life. Instead of accepting, Hajin bursts into mocking laughter, completely shattering her smug confidence. He asks if she really thinks he ran away just because he was being chased. With a triumphant smirk, the Assassin King reveals that he already figured out how to expel the blood parasite 5 years ago. He spent years secretly training to reach a level high enough to break through the Alliance's inescapable net formation. Furious at the thought of being manipulated again, Hajin yells that he has already had 30 years of his life stolen by those bastards, and he will never be fooled by anyone else. Commanding her to get out of his sight, Hajin boldly offers to spare her life if she runs away right now. The queen's eyes narrow in sheer disbelief at his arrogance. Refusing to let his insult slide, she prepares her lethal claws, her eyes glowing with bloodlust. Hajin charges forward, his sword blazing with intense blue energy. With a final, furious insult, he meets her strike head-on. The collision of their ultimate techniques triggers a devastating explosion, sending a massive pillar of fire and smoke high into the night sky and obliterating the surrounding trees. As the dust slowly settles inside the newly formed crater, the grim reality of the clash is revealed. The queen has successfully pierced Hajin's arm with her glowing claws, drawing a heavy spray of blood as he groans in immense pain. Suddenly, a massive sword strike sweeps through the clearing. Hajin looks up in shock to see his former enslaver, First Elder Jung Ilryung, arriving on the battlefield. With a single, powerful slash, the First Elder severs the secret demon queen's arm. She screams in absolute agony as blood splatters from her missing limb. But this is no rescue. The First Elder simply stands back and watches with cold, calculating eyes as the frenzied queen retaliates. In a brutal, swift blur of motion, the queen strikes back, completely severing Hajin's limbs. Blood sprays across the dark dirt as Hajin collapses, coughing up a massive torrent of blood. His eyes bulge in sheer terror and helplessness. Smiling sadistically, the queen grabs him by the hair, mocking his pathetic state. Her face contorts into a monstrous grin of pure madness as she violently tears Hajin's head completely off his shoulders. Covered in his blood, she throws her head back and laughs hysterically under the night sky, while the Alliance forces watch the gruesome execution of the legendary assassin from the shadows. As Hajin's consciousness fades into the starry night, his final thoughts are filled with profound regret. After a lifetime of slaughter, all he ever wanted was to live an ordinary life as a normal human being. As his soul drifts away, he desperately wishes for just one more chance. Suddenly, the darkness shatters. Sunlight pours into a quiet, luxurious room inside the grand main sanctuary of the heavenly demon divine cult. In a plush bed, a young man with long brown hair lies completely still. Without warning, his pale hand twitches, his eyes flutter open, and he abruptly sits upright with a sharp gasp. Staring wildly around the room, his eyes widen in absolute shock and confusion. Chun Hajin's dying wish has just been granted, and his consciousness has awakened inside a brand dangerous rival faction. Chapter 3. Deep inside the grand, multi-tiered red pagodas of the heavenly demon divine cult's inner sanctuary, a deadly succession plot is already in motion. A palace doctor kneels submissively before the fourth young lord, delivering a grim but highly anticipated medical report. The third young lord, Xior Yang, is expected to die tonight. The fourth young lord takes a calm drag from his smoking pipe, a sinister smile spreading across his face as his ruthless plans fall perfectly into place. But across the sanctuary, the boy meant to die is currently trapped in a horrific nightmare of his past life. Chun Hajin dreams of his days as a young assassin, resting on a blood-soaked battlefield alongside a fellow child killer. In the dream, Hajin holds a small, beautifully detailed wooden bird he carved himself, confessing his desperate wish to escape their brutal existence and live freely in the peaceful countryside. When his companion eagerly begs to join him, Hajin firmly refuses, knowing the deadly consequences of defection. The dream violently shifts to a pouring rainstorm. His companion collapses, coughing up blood as his eye bursts from a horrific internal attack. Standing over them in the storm, the cold-hearted leader of the Righteous Heavenly Alliance reveals that their attempt to escape triggered the lethal blood parasites wrapped around their hearts. The nightmare culminates in a flash of the sadistic secret demon queen tearing Hajin's head completely off his shoulders. Hajin wakes up screaming, clutching his neck in a cold sweat. Disoriented, he realizes he isn't dead on a muddy battlefield, but lying in a highly luxurious bed. His elite assassin instincts instantly flare up as he senses someone approaching. A young maid named Manhwa enters the room carrying a meal tray, only to find the bed completely empty. Before she can even blink, Hajin ambushes her from behind. Pressing a sharp wooden chopstick against her throat, he fiercely interrogates the terrified girl, demanding to know if she is an agent of the Steel Blood Fortress. Trembling in fear, Manhwa stammers that she is merely his loyal servant. When Hajin demands to know who brought him here, she explains that he has been in this very room for a long time. According to her, he just woke up from a 6-month coma caused by a severe chi blockage. Hajin is utterly bewildered, knowing for a fact that he was just executed. Demanding the absolute truth, he suddenly freezes. Catching his reflection in a large oval mirror, Hajin stares in mind-blown shock. Staring back at him is a completely different, handsome face and a pale, youthful body. Looking down at his new hands, the impossible reality sets in. He has reincarnated. As Hajin briefly recalls the violent moment of his death, he snaps back to reality to find Anghwa staring at him with deep concern, still holding her tray. Still reeling from the existential shock, Hajin slides open his wooden doors to figure out exactly where he is. He steps out to view a massive, incredibly grand courtyard with towering stone stairs, spotting two men walking toward his building. His awe is cut short when one of them, a stern, powerful man in red and black robes, approaches. Hajin watches warily, but the man suddenly drops to one knee. Saluting with deep reverence, the man loudly congratulates the third young lord on his recovery, praising the glory of the divine teachings. Hajin's face contorts in absolute comedic horror as the greeting clicks in his mind. His dying wish for a peaceful life has been granted in the worst way possible. He has just reincarnated into the infamous heavenly demon divine cult, the most dangerous and ruthless faction in the entire martial world. The man kneeling before him is Mudam, the first royal guard, and he immediately heads to the grand throne room to report this miraculous recovery. Walking down the dimly lit, lantern-lined corridors, Mudam enters the main audience hall and kneels before the supreme leader. Seated in the shadows of a massive throne is the terrifying demon lord. When commanded to speak, Mudam reports that the third young lord has finally awakened, but delivers a critical catch. Soryang has lost all of his martial prowess due to severe overextension. Mudam respectfully asks how they should handle the weakened heir. In response, the demon lord remains silent for a moment before suddenly unleashing a suffocating, overwhelming wave of energy. The sheer pressure instantly pins Mudam flat against the floor, causing the nearby candles to flicker violently. With his eyes glowing a menacing red, the supreme leader issues an absolute decree. He commands that no further reports be made regarding the third young lord until the cult's closing ceremony in 3 months. Mudam bows deeply in submission, accepting the order. As the pressure subsides, the subordinate kneeling before the grand, candlelit throne silently prays that the supreme leader will ultimately accomplish his great deed. Without realizing it, the demon lord has just handed the powerless, reincarnated assassin a crucial 3-month survive the deadly trials of his new demonic family. Chapter 4. Trapped inside the heavenly demon divine cult, the oldest, most evil faction in the Muram world, whose very existence brings anxiety to the righteous Heavenly Alliance, and the Steel Blood Fortress, Chunhajin quickly realizes the absolute absurdity of his situation. In his mind, the cult's supreme leader is like a terrifying demon standing atop a mountain of skulls, yet here Hajin is, staring out with his own golden eyes at the heart of chaos. But panic won't keep him alive. Apologizes for his earlier rudeness. Yorin immediately notes his unusually mild temper, assuming his recent chi blockage has completely broken his martial spirit. Seeing him as weak prey, she decides to get straight to business. Pulling out a contract bearing both of their seals, she explains that if either party breaks the agreement, the penalty is tripled. She then lists the massive financial investments she made on his behalf, demanding an immediate repayment of 6,000 yang or a new contract detailing his repayment plan. Hajin takes the contract and reads it, realizing the original Sioryang was sponsored by Yeorin. He quickly sees through her scheme. She is using his recent coma as a convenient excuse to play the victim, nullify their deal, and extort her money back. Deciding to play along since he plans to leave the demonic cult anyway, he easily agrees to the massive financial demand and calls for Anghwa to bring writing materials. But his quick compliance makes Yorin incredibly greedy. Thinking he is just a reckless fool, she decides to push her luck by adding a humiliating new condition. With a malicious smile, she tells him that if he cannot pay her back, he must serve her like a loyal dog. That extreme insult crosses the line, instantly flaring up Hajin's assassin pride. Standing tall, he firmly states that the contract will end once the money is paid, and demands mutual respect as contractors until then. When Yorin arrogantly smirks at the idea of respecting him, Hajin executes a drastic counter-strategy. Catching her completely off guard, he orders Anghwa to summon the commander of the royal guards. The high-ranking officer arrives quickly, bowing respectfully. Without missing a beat, Hajin loudly orders the commander to prepare a carriage and send word to the palace, declaring his intention to take this dispute directly to the supreme leader, the demon lord, as his third disciple. The commander bows and agrees to send word to the demon god's palace immediately, leaving the room under a clear night sky with a bright moon. Yorin completely panics. Realizing he is dead serious, she desperately warns him that bringing their secret contract to the demon lord will get them both killed. Hajin calmly agrees, but coldly points out the massive difference in their stakes. As a crippled heir who has already lost his martial prowess, the worst punishment he faces is exile. But for her, the demon lord's wrath would mean the complete ruin and imprisonment of her entire prestigious family. The threat of mutually assured destruction instantly shatters Yorin's leverage. Terrified by the visualization of her family's downfall, she stands frozen in shock. As Hajin casually turns his back and announces he is going for a walk, a desperate Yorin stops him, asking if he has given up on becoming the supreme leader. Looking down at her with a cold, mocking expression, Hajin points out the absolute absurdity of aiming for the throne with his frail body. He has absolutely nothing to lose, and that is exactly what makes him so dangerous. Clenching her fist in growing anger and flushed with embarrassment, Yorin asks what it will take to stop him from going to the demon lord. In a total reversal of power, Hajin thrusts the contract directly into her face, boldly demanding that she rip it up with her own hands. Chapter Hong Yorin, and forcing her to destroy the extortion contract. Chun Hajin cannot escape the ghosts of his past. As he prepares for his fateful audience with the supreme leader of the demonic cult, his mind is violently pulled back to the heavy sins of his previous life. In a grim flashback, a younger Hajin stands in a rain-soaked rural courtyard, surrounded by his dark-clad assassin squad and the lifeless bodies of a woman and a young boy. He coldly confirms with his subordinates that there are no survivors, justifying the slaughter by claiming the targets were traitors who betrayed the alliance. But as he looks down at the boy's pale hand, he gently takes a blood-stained wooden bird carving. His eyes widen in absolute horror as he recognizes the carving, realizing they have made a catastrophic mistake. Suddenly, rain begins to fall as Hajin yells a warning to move aside. A nearby soldier is violently thrown backward, crashing hard into a wall with a painful grunt. A powerful, long-haired warrior slashes through the remaining soldiers in a blind rage, blood spraying everywhere. The devastated man drops to his knees, weeping bitterly as he protectively cradles his slaughtered family. Hajin steps back in shock, desperately trying to explain that they were lied to by their superiors and that he truly did not know the victims were innocent. But his pleas of ignorance do nothing to wash away the blood. As a centipede crawls through the blood on the ground, the warrior grabs Hajin by the collar and chokes him, crying out in despair about the horror of committing murder every single day. Screaming in agonizing rage, the warrior asks if killing people is just a job to Hajin, before delivering a chilling final curse from the afterlife, declaring that Hajin's existence will become the death of all those he has murdered. That horrific curse still echoes in the reincarnated Hajin's mind as he stares out over the Grand Palace Bridge in the present day. The memory of his past sins weighs heavily on him, but he has no time to dwell on his guilt. Deep inside the luxurious main palace, the absolute ruler of the heavenly demon divine cult is already preparing for his arrival. Inside a bedroom adorned with golden curtains, maids perform a quiet ritual, carefully cutting a lock of the demon lord's hair and holding it on a silk pillow before dressing the muscular, long-haired ruler in his grand black and gold robes. Behind a beaded curtain, the first royal guard kneels respectfully, congratulating the demon lord on accomplishing a great deed. The demon lord, holding a blue porcelain bottle decorated with a golden dragon, asks if the third young lord has requested to see him. The guard confirms that a carriage has been dispatched to the third young lord's abode and that the boy will arrive shortly. The demon lord casually pours a liquid from the dragon bottle into a shallow bowl, drinking it down in one swift gulp. Slamming the bowl down, he issues a chilling command that completely changes the stakes of the upcoming meeting. Instead of bringing his son to the throne room for a standard audience, he coldly orders the guard to escort the boy directly to the demonic judgment pavilion. The first royal guard's eyes widen in absolute shock at the mention of the dreaded location, knowing it is a place of severe punishment and deadly trials. Yet, he obediently bows, salutes, and accepts the command. As the guard departs to carry out the ominous order, the demon lord simply stretches his arms and lets out a massive yawn, casually wondering if it is winter yet, treating his son's potentially fatal trial with terrifying indifference. Completely unaware of the deadly trap waiting for him, Hajin is busy dealing with his own suspicions back at his snowy courtyard. A palace doctor checks his pulse, sweating nervously as he marvels at the boy's incredible regenerative abilities. The doctor notes that despite the chaotic aura flowing through his damaged veins, Hajin is recovering at an unprecedented rate. When Hajin glares back and asks what is with the intense gaze, the doctor quickly bows and apologizes, explaining that he was simply shocked by the young lord's rapid healing. The physician then announces that acupuncture is no longer needed and that the young lord will now be treated with nutrient-dense meals and the highly exclusive supreme healing potion. When Hajin asks what that is, the doctor explains it is a handcrafted artisan brew reserved only for the highest-ranking members of the main sanctuary. But Hajin's elite assassin instincts immediately flare up. He remains highly skeptical, silently noting that if this supposed miracle medicine actually worked, his frail body would have recovered much faster by now, wondering if something is off with his own senses. Later that morning, Hajin stretches lazily in his courtyard, complaining about the gloomy atmosphere of his new life. But as he looks down at the torn pieces of Yoren's extortion contract scattered across his table, reality suddenly sets in. In a rare moment of comedic panic, he violently pulls his hair, wondering if his bold refusal to be treated like a dog was actually a massive mistake. He realizes that offending the powerful Joksa family, while knowing absolutely nothing about the cult's internal politics, was incredibly reckless. Before his anxiety can spiral any further, his loyal maid Dongran politely interrupts from the doorway, announcing that the carriage from the demon god's palace has finally arrived. The summons instantly snaps Hajin out of his panic. Reflecting on the absolute power of the heavenly demon, who is considered one of the strongest martial artists in the entire world, Hajin realizes there is no turning back. His expression hardens with absolute determination. Deciding to face the absolute ruler head-on, Hajin firmly pushes open the double doors of his quarters and steps out into the cold air, completely oblivious to the fact that he is walking straight. Stepping down from the carriage, Chun Hajin is immediately hit with a grim reality check. Two dark-robed guards are waiting for him in the freezing courtyard, coldly announcing that the demon lord has summoned him directly to the demonic judgment pavilion. Looking up at the massive, misty mountain staircase winding endlessly into the jagged cliffs, Hajin breaks into a cold sweat. He has absolutely no idea what this dreaded pavilion actually is, but the ominous, suffocating atmosphere is enough to put him on high alert. High above the mountain path, the demon lord, Li Qiansang, lounges comfortably on a luxurious daybed inside a cliffside pavilion. Sipping from an ornate, dragon-patterned porcelain cup, the supreme leader calmly notes that his alcohol tastes a little sweeter today, completely unbothered by the deadly trial he has just initiated for his son. As Hajin follows his guide up the narrow, steep stone steps carved into the mountain, the sheer scale of the demon cult's headquarters begins to sink in. But it is not the breathtaking scenery that puts him on edge. Glancing at the rocky crevices, his elite assassin instincts instantly flare up. He spots numerous high-level martial masters completely surrounding the area, perfectly hidden in the shadows. The suffocating security immediately reminds him of the inescapable formations that cornered and killed him in his past life. He realizes he has just walked into a dragon's den, and a single mistake here will guarantee his brutal death. At the top of the treacherous path, they finally arrive at a massive stone door carved with a menacing dragon emblem. Hajin is momentarily confused, wondering why a place called a pavilion pavilion is hidden behind a heavy vault door. As the massive stone slabs rumble open with a heavy grind, he steels his nerves. He knows his survival depends on projecting absolute confidence, reminding himself that every single move he makes from here on out will decide his fate. But the moment he steps through the doorway, his confident facade completely shatters. Instead of a blood-stained dungeon, he finds himself standing in a breathtaking, sunlit valley filled with lush green grass, blooming flowers, and cascading waterfalls. It is the dead of winter outside, yet this hidden paradise radiates the warm, comforting weather of spring. Spotting a deer drinking from a stream and birds chirping in the trees, Hajin quickly deduces that this impossible landscape is an incredibly realistic, illusory formation. For a brief second, he touches a cherry blossom petal, feeling a sudden pang of nostalgia for his old dream of retiring to a peaceful green sanctuary, away from the bloodshed of the martial world. But his daydream is violently cut short by a mysterious voice calling out from the mist. Startled, Hajin jumps back as a traditional pavilion materializes out of thin air. Inside, a figure wearing a black robe embroidered with golden dragons stands with his back turned. Cautiously, Hajin takes a step forward, his boot pressing down onto the lush grass. Instantly, vibrant flowers bloom around his foot, but the moment he lifts it, they wither and die into brown ash. Panic sets in as he realizes his feet are now moving completely on their own. Caught in a terrifying, bewitching trance, Hajin marches forward with a blank expression, leaving a trail of dead, withered grass in his wake. Watching from his seat, the demon lord smirks, noting the cruel rule of the formation. The first step brings life, and the second brings death. The beautiful illusion is actually hiding a terrifying reality. The pavilion is perched on the very edge of a sheer mountain cliff, and the bewitched Hajin is walking straight toward the deadly drop. Just before disaster strikes, Hajin's deeply ingrained instincts, as the assassin king, scream at him to stop. Snapping out of the trance, he abruptly halts his boots on the grass. Clenching his fists, he knows he cannot turn back now. If he wants to survive and escape this demonic cult, he has to face the supreme leader head-on. With his heart pounding rapidly against his ribs, Hajin steps onto the wooden floor of the pavilion. He looks up, taking in the imposing, bare-chested figure of the ninth heavenly demon. Li Chuansang stares back down at him with a cold, piercing gaze, holding his liquor flask with terrifying indifference. The tension between father and son is absolute. Meanwhile, outside the heavy stone doors, the guards are having a much darker conversation. The younger guard asks if the third young lord has entered, but the senior guard looks deeply troubled. Hesitantly, the veteran reveals a chilling piece of cult history. Under the current demon lord's reign, only 2 outsiders have ever been allowed inside the demonic judgment pavilion. The first was exactly 25 years ago, a secret disciple taken in long before the first young lord. That challenger failed the trial, and his body was brutally torn to shreds. Horrified, the younger guard wonders if the demon lord actually intends to execute his own son, but the senior guard points out a sliver of hope. The second person to enter the pavilion was the general strategist, a brilliant man who conquered the deadly trial using pure intellect rather than martial arts. Staring up at the menacing demonic face carved into the stone gates, the senior guard can only wonder if the third young lord will be the next to walk out alive. Back inside the illusion, the stakes have never been higher. Hajin sweats nervously under the crushing pressure of the demon lord's aura, desperately trying to calculate his next move, while the supreme leader calmly waits for the trial to begin. Chapter 8. Trapped inside the deadly illusion of the under the crushing pressure of the demon lord's aura, desperately trying to calculate his next move to survive the trial. Bowing deeply in the lush, sunlit garden, he is completely overwhelmed by Li Chuansang's presence. The supreme ruler of the demonic cult sits regally on his throne, holding a dragon-patterned liquor bottle. The sheer weight of his aura causes Hajin to let out a nervous hiccup in shock. Comparing the demon lord's dignity to a towering, majestic mountain, Hajin realizes he is facing the world's most powerful martial god. Panicking at how easily he is being intimidated, Hajin repeatedly slaps his own cheeks, forcing himself to snap out of his fear and reclaim his pride as a former top-tier assassin. The tension breaks slightly when the demon lord casually pours a clear, fragrant liquor from his dragon-patterned bottle and offers it to his son. Hajin gratefully accepts the bowl, momentarily distracted by the incredible quality of the alcohol. But his brief moment of peace shatters when he gulps down the drink. The supreme leader suddenly asks why he requested this audience, causing Hajin to choke and startle. Realizing he needs to be direct, Hajin gathers his courage to state he has a request. However, under the crushing weight of his master's gaze, he completely fumbles his words. In a sudden burst of desperate panic, he accidentally blurts out a request to leave the cult entirely. Hajin instantly clutches his head, realizing he just made a catastrophic slip of the tongue. The demon lord silently sips his drink before repeating the shocking question. When Hajin hesitates, the demon lord simply commands him to pour more liquor. Frustrated by his inability to read his master's expression, Hajin carefully pours the drink. The demon lord notes his vagueness, asking if Hajin truly wants to cut ties or if he has simply given up because his body is too weak. Sweating profusely, Hajin frantically waves his hands in denial. Knowing he is in deep trouble, he uses his physical weakness as a desperate excuse, explaining that he has lost his martial prowess and only wanted to go out for some fresh air to help his recovery. Hajin hopes the excuse sounds believable, but the demon lord violently slams his hand onto the table, splashing liquor everywhere. He points out how utterly ridiculous it is for a disciple to request an audience with the absolute ruler of the cult just to ask for permission to go outside. Realizing his tactical error, Hajin quickly pivots. Playing a risky emotional card, he bows and claims he simply wanted to see his master to fulfill his duties as a disciple, hoping to stir the cold ruler's sentiments. Instead of being moved, the demon lord slowly crushes his ceramic drinking bowl into fine dust with his bare hand. Hajin stares in absolute horror at the effortless display of raw power. Towering Towering over the boy with an imposing physical stature, the Demon Lord's eyes glow with a terrifying blue light. He coldly states that if Hajin truly knew his duties, he never would have appeared before him with that weak body. Paralyzed with fear, Hajin panics, wondering if the Supreme Leader's mystical eyes have somehow seen through his soul transmigration secret. But just as Hajin braces for the worst, the Demon Lord simply turns away. Hajin is relieved but deeply confused, feeling slightly upset that his immediate attempt to pay respects after recovering was dismissed as neglecting his duties. Looking out at the distant mountains from the balcony, the Demon Lord places his hand on the railing, emitting a dark, smoky energy. Without another word, he dismisses his son, promising to send someone in 3 days. Hajin leaves the pavilion incredibly stressed and frustrated, having no idea if his request was actually granted. High on the steep, isolated cliff, the demonic judgment pavilion stands quiet as the Demon Lord looks out over the clear skies and green pastures, reflecting on how long it has been since he last saw this peaceful view. Later that night, under a full moon, the true nature of Hajin's survival is revealed. Rewarding a nervous, sweating subordinate with a drink, the Demon Lord asks about the status of the third young master. The subordinate reports that Hajin has simply been recovering at home, but the Demon Lord looks through the bars of a nearby cage, asking if that is truly all. As a small, horned, snake-like creature crawls onto his hand, the Demon Lord reminisces about finding it 10 years ago, thinking it was a legendary Imugi, only to be disappointed it was just a venomous snake. Yet, seeing Hajin today reminded him of finding a hidden magic pearl in a common snake's mouth. The Demon Lord explains that the demonic judgment pavilion is a high-level mind-reading formation that only he can cast. A top-down view reveals how Hajin walked away from evil while leaving scorched footprints, symbolizing his understanding of death. The formation reads the subconscious heart of anyone who enters. If Hajin had harbored even a sliver of murderous intent or displeased the Demon Lord, the formation's demonic beasts and roots would have violently destroyed him. Shifting his focus, the Demon Lord asks if the solitary bamboo grove is being well maintained. The subordinate confirms that Elder's personnel tend to it every other day, reporting an average of 5 casualties a month but no recent deaths. Hearing this, the Demon Lord smiles coldly, opening a small wooden box to reveal a worm-like creature. He orders the withdrawal of all personnel, deciding it is the perfect place to send the third young master to get some fresh air. As a shadow beast brutally leaps and bites a rat on the floor nearby, spilling blood, the terrified subordinate realizes the immense danger Hajin is about to face. 3 days later, Hajin finds himself wandering through the dark, isolated wilderness of the solitary bamboo grove. Multiple glowing blue eyes of hidden shadow beasts peer at him through the thick bamboo stalks. Deeply annoyed as a creepy green lizard crawls onto his shoulder, Hajin grits his teeth in absolute frustration as the lizard's tail brushes his chin. He internally curses the Demon Lord for sending him to this creepy, isolated wilderness when he only asked to go outside. Standing completely alone in the massive, dark bamboo forest, he screams at the sky, furiously cursing the Demon Lord for throwing him into a deadly survival zone just because he asked to go out. Standing completely alone in the massive, dark bamboo forest of the solitary bamboo grove, Chun Hajin screams at the sky, furiously cursing the Demon Lord for throwing him into a deadly survival zone just because he asked to go outside for a walk. But his furious tantrum is abruptly cut short when a heavy hand clamps down on his shoulder. A stern voice warns him that his words are highly dangerous. Hajin spins around in shock to find a towering, muscular blonde man standing right behind him. The stranger calmly explains that insulting the Supreme Leader is a capital offense carrying an immediate death sentence, with absolutely no exceptions for young lords. Realizing he just committed a massive blunder, Hajin quickly backpedals, lying through his teeth that he wasn't badmouthing anyone. The man immediately accepts the excuse and apologizes, leaving Hajin sweating as he realizes these cultists truly view their leader as a living god. Curious about his new companion, Hajin asks if the man is from the Court of Elders. In response, the blonde warrior violently stomps his foot and strikes a dramatic martial arts salute. He formally introduces himself as Ma Dongpil, the third leader of the Court of Elders, and proudly declares it an absolute honor to serve as Hajin's new personal guard. Surrounded by a comedic aura of fiery passion, Dongpil swears to protect the young lord with his life. Hajin, completely drained of energy, just begs the man to stop making dramatic oaths and leave him alone. Over the next few days, the reality of his situation sets in. Wandering through the misty mountains and dense bamboo, Hajin realizes the beautiful grove is actually an inescapable maze. Dropping to his knees with bloodshot eyes, he throws another frustrated tantrum, banging his fists against a wooden pillar as he cries over being exiled. But after venting his despair, his elite assassin mindset finally kicks in. He remembers the terrible premonition he felt upon reincarnating and accepts that he has no choice but to live as the third young lord for now. Knowing the demon cult strictly enforces the survival of the fittest, he realizes he cannot just wait around to be culled. If he wants to survive and escape, he needs raw power. Resolving to stop relying on petty tricks, he vows to walk the path of martial arts and leave this place with his head held high. Just as he makes this dramatic vow, Dongpil suddenly peeks out from behind a bamboo stalk, scaring Hajin half to death. Hajin furiously yells at his guard for sneaking up on him, but Dongpil looks genuinely hurt. He points out that it has already been 2 days since they arrived, and Hajin hasn't eaten or drank a single drop of water. Shocked by how much time has passed, Hajin tells his guard to watch himself, internally complaining about the man's incredibly stiff and inflexible demeanor. By his 3rd day in the grove, Hajin finally begins his serious training. Sitting in a meditative pose deep in the forest, he activates the boundless technique to heal his body and soul. But as bright blue energy swirls around him, his eyes snap open in pure shock. The flow of chi feels completely different than he expected. He realizes this weakened, blocked body is already at the peak of the 3rd stage of power. In his past life as the legendary Assassin King, he had only reached the peak of the 4th stage. Astonished, Hajin realizes the original Xiaoyang was an absolute martial arts genius. To make things even better, his purification technique automatically activates, absorbing the surrounding turbid chi and converting it into pure, internalized power. Realizing this synergy will multiply his growth rate, Hajin pushes for an immediate breakthrough. Unleashing a massive vortex of energy that shatters the ground beneath him, he forces his way into the fourth stage of power, as a brilliant pillar of light shoots into the sky. 5 days into his exile, the misty mountains finally settle. Hajin clenches his fist in triumph, realizing his body is completely healed. His tattered blood pathways and vital organs are fully restored, and his hair has even darkened as the severe chi blockage clears. With his health back, Hajin easily adapts to his new life. He enjoys Dongpil's excellent cooking, sleeps soundly, and begins reactivating his past assassin abilities. Focusing his mind, he taps into hypersensation, a legendary skill born from his countless brushes with death. Amplifying it with the Heavenly Net 6 power technique, he uses the first form, omniscient sight. Instantly, his senses expand beyond those of any wild beast. Without even turning his head, he can vividly track every bird, wolf, and lizard in the forest. Watching a bird of prey brutally snatch a lizard, Hajin smirks, jokingly hating himself for adapting so perfectly to this savage wilderness. His peaceful focus is shattered when Dongpil pops out from behind a pillar again to announce dinner. Hajin jumps back in comical fury, accusing the guard of hiding nearby just to prank him. Despite the angry rant, Dongpil simply bows with perfect politeness, leaving Hajin highly suspicious that the man is playing dumb on purpose. As a black crow flies across the pale sunset, Dongpil's demeanor shifts. He warns Hajin that the grove's deadly demonic monsters become active at night, urging them to head back immediately. Walking briskly through the darkening bamboo, Hajin smiles with absolute confidence. Now that he has the physical foundation, he plans to pound his past assassin knowledge into this talented body and regain his peak strength in record time. But his ambitious thoughts are cut short when Dongpil suddenly stops dead in his tracks. A strange, eerie sound echoes through the pitch-black trees. Suddenly, a bright, mysterious streak of light flashes through the dense bamboo stalks. Dongpil whips around in sheer shock, breaking into a cold sweat as he stares into the darkness, terrified that they have just crossed paths with a ghost. Chapter 10. That terrifying streak of light Dongpil thought was a ghost haunting the dark bamboo forest. It was actually just Hajin. Restored his broken body. The former assassin leaps high into the air, soaring effortlessly above the bamboo canopy. He maneuvers with extreme speed and grace, celebrating the return of his hypersenses through the Heavenly Net 6 power technique. With his physical foundation set, he plans to recover his third signature skill, the Dark Shadow Chi, a technique created by combining the elite hidden skills of the 10 great sects, which once made him a legend as the Assassin King, Chun Hajin. But mid-leap, he hits a massive mental wall. He is currently living in the heart of the Heavenly Demon Divine cult. If he starts using orthodox assassin skills, he will instantly expose his true identity and sign his own death warrant. To survive, he has to learn whatever demonic arts the original Seoryang used. Suddenly, he senses a strange presence below, followed by a distant scream echoing through the night. Hajin rushes back to the courtyard of his quarters and calls out for his guard. Dongpil drops from the sky like a rock, landing on one knee and nearly giving Hajin a heart attack. Recovering his composure, Hajin awkwardly fishes for information, asking if any of his rival siblings practice non-demonic arts. When Dongpil looks confused, Hajin directly asks what would happen if he simply didn't learn demonic arts. Dongpil looks at him in absolute bewilderment, warning that the demon lord would be considerably displeased by such treason. Realizing he has absolutely no choice but to adapt, Hajin uses his authority as the third young lord, ordering Dongpil to hit the library and bring back every secret demonic text he can borrow. Dongpil takes this highly unusual request straight to his superior, the guardmaster. Kneeling inside a grand pavilion, he reports the order, leaving the bearded leader stroking his chin in deep suspicion. Why would a martial genius need to consult basic texts? Taking a massive risk, Dongpil boldly asks if the young lord lost his memories after his severe chi blockage. The master admits that Seoryang used to be an arrogant, greedy tyrant, but now acts like a completely different, confused person. However, since the boy managed to survive the Demon Lord's mind-reading demonic judgment pavilion, the master tells Dongpil to drop his suspicions. Protecting a successor candidate is a highly complex political minefield, which is exactly why Dongpil was specially chosen for the role. Handing over a golden key, the master authorizes the guard to discreetly borrow a few secret texts, but before Dongpil leaves, the master asks if he has explained the true danger of the solitary bamboo grove yet. This ancient demonic forest predates the cult itself, acting as a brutal death trap that has claimed countless lives over 1,000 years. Standing alone on his balcony looking at a dead monster, the master realizes the Demon Lord is using this deadly grove as Seoryang's second deliberate test. No. Later that night, under a bright full moon, Hajin sits in his room, carefully counting a massive stack of books on his table. He is shocked to find 17 books. While Dongpil casually claims he only brought the best ones, Hajin mentally prepares to study the demonic arts without his orthodox bias, so he can understand their true nature. But the atmosphere shifts when Dongpil points out 3 specific red books that must be returned in 3 days. He explains that these contain the 10 great demonic arts, the absolute pinnacle of the cult's power, accessible only to the top 3 young lords. Dongpil stares intensely at his master. Every single person in the divine cult knows about these legendary techniques. The fact that Seoryang doesn't is a massive red flag. Dropping the formalities, Dongpil directly asks if Hajin truly remembers nothing. Caught in a dangerous corner, Hajin slams his hand onto a book on the table to get Dongpil's attention. He explains that he has completely lost his martial prowess after waking up from his chi blockage. Clutching his head, he plays the desperate victim, claiming his mind and heart are completely ruined. He begs Dongpil to help him relearn all his forgotten arts so they can survive their exile, softly asking the guard to fetch some weapons at daybreak. The emotional manipulation works flawlessly. Deeply moved by his lord's lord's earnest plea, Dongpil bursts into literal tears of burning passion, screaming a dramatic vow to support the young lord with his life. Hajin just stares at him deadpan, completely exhausted by the guy's overwhelming intensity. Fired up, Dongpil heads outside to patrol the wooden barricades in the dark. He notes that the grove's shadow beasts will become hyperactive in about 10 days, but feels secure for now. Looking back at the lit window, he vows to protect Hajin's intense study session and walks off into the night to fetch the weapons. But inside the supposedly secure room, Hajin isn't studying at all. He has completely passed out face down on his books, muttering complaints about the demon lord in his sleep, blissfully unaware of a small, glowing-eyed beast licking its paw in the dark right outside his window. Chapter 11. Waking up from his impromptu nap, Hajin finally gets down to business with the massive stack of secret texts. He quickly realizes that his past life signature technique, the dark shadow, the raw, absolute destructive power of the demonic arts. Ironically, this demonic focus on lethal output and offense over stability perfectly matches his old ruthless assassin methods. But there is a massive catch. With his currently weak physical body, mastering the pinnacle 10 great demonic arts is completely impossible. Flipping through the manuals, he searches for a workaround and finds a foundational text called the True Demonic Art that might serve as the perfect bridge to enhance his old skills. But before he can dive too deep, the sheer volume of complex information gives him a headache. Deciding to clear his mind, he shuts the book and steps out into the courtyard to meditate using the boundless technique. He settles into his deep trance. His newly restored hypersenses pick up a subtle rustling in the tall grass nearby. Unbeknownst to him, a massive, scaly bird claw steps silently through the foliage. Assuming Dongpil is already back with the weapons, Hajin ends his meditation and turns around, but he isn't greeted by his loyal guard. Instead, a pair of menacing, glowing blue eyes stares back at him from the pitch-black darkness. Before Hajin can even react, a massive force violently obliterates the courtyard wall. Debris explodes everywhere, sending the former assassin flying backward from the sheer shockwave. Landing in a defensive crouch, Hajin coughs through the thick dust, bracing himself. Through the haze, a grotesque, red-skinned head with a sharp beak and a single, giant, glowing blue eye emerges. But as the smoke clears completely, he is left completely dumbfounded, breaking into a cold sweat at the sheer absurdity of the sight. The terrifying intruder is actually a giant, mutant chicken sporting 6 scaly legs, massive wings, and 3 screeching heads. Najin barely has time to process the ridiculous situation before the giant bird charges forward with terrifying speed. He narrowly dodges a lethal swipe that tears right through his clothes. Leaping high into the air, the mutant chicken flaps its massive wings and unleashes a deafening screech. Hajin covers his ears in agonizing pain, shocked to realize this absurd farm animal is actually using a powerful sound-based martial art. Meanwhile, deep in the bamboo forest, Dongpil is walking back with a heavy basket full of swords. He is sweating nervously, genuinely worried that handing the young lord a weapon might trigger the return of his notoriously cruel and abusive personality. He tries to remind himself to stay professionally detached, but his anxious thoughts are instantly cut short. Catching the heavy scent of blood drifting from the courtyard, Dongpil drops his calm demeanor and sprints back in an absolute panic, screaming for his master. Back at the ruined quarters, Hajin is officially sick of the noise. Lunging forward, he throws a heavy punch and grapples one of the beast's massive legs, but the 3-headed chicken just screeches mockingly, bobbing its heads before blasting him with another point-blank sonic shockwave. Blown backward by the sheer wind pressure, Hajin desperately scans the rubble for anything he can use to fight back against this bizarrely powerful opponent. Spotting a thick, shattered stalk of bamboo on the ground, his eyes light up. As the beast charges again, Hajin uses the courtyard wall to propel himself high into the air, completely outmaneuvering the monster. With a fierce battle cry, he drives the jagged bamboo spear directly into one of the chicken's heads, causing it to screech in agony as feathers fly everywhere. Landing heavily on his feet, Hajin pants for breath, staring at the motionless beast and praying the fight is finally over. It isn't. To his absolute horror, the chicken's glowing blue eye snaps wide open. Thrashing with renewed, furious rage, the beast swats Hajin with a devastating counterattack, sending him crashing straight through the remaining courtyard wall with a massive, shattering impact. Sitting in the rubble and coughing up dust, Hajin clutches his bruised chest. He quickly realizes that raw physical force and a makeshift wooden spear are never going to pierce this mutant's iron-like feathers. As the giant multi-headed beast kicks up dirt and charges for the kill, Hajin decides to stop playing around. Dropping into a low stance, he channels his internal energy, preparing to unleash a high-level martial arts technique usually reserved for elite human masters. With a determined glare, Hajin charges straight at the monster, throwing a devastating punch as the giant chicken leaps down with its claws bared, locking them into a brutal head-on clash. Chapter 12. Locking into a brutal head-on clash with the leaping beast, Hajin doesn't rely on brute force alone. He activates hypervision. His eyes ignite with an intense red glow, slowing his perception of time to an absolute crawl. The mutant chicken's lethal claw strikes become sluggish, allowing the former assassin to gracefully weave through the attacks, leaving a trail of afterimages. Scanning the creature's massive body, he spots a glowing core pulsing beneath its thick feathers. With a decisive shout, Hajin thrusts his jagged bamboo spear forward, driving it deep into the beast's heart. The monster unleashes one final screech before collapsing into a bloody heap. Moments later, Dongpil sprints into the ruined courtyard, screaming in panic as he searches the debris. Expecting a gruesome scene, he instead spots Hajin casually sitting on a rock. The young lord is drenched in blood but completely relaxed, greeting his terrified guard. Dongpil gasps in disbelief at the massive carcass, rushing over to treat Hajin's wounds, only for Hajin to wipe the blood away and reveal he doesn't have a single scratch. Still sweating, Dongpil explains this beast is an azure lotus, a creature as lethal as a wild leopard, and is utterly dumbfounded that Hajin killed it alone. But Hajin couldn't care less. He just wants to know if they have a pot big enough to boil it for dinner. Pointing his broken spear at his guard, Hajin demands a full explanation about this ridiculous forest. Dongpil explains the solitary solitary bamboo grove is a natural demonic forest overflowing with incredibly dense spiritual energy. This concentrated energy makes the bamboo grow at an exponential rate, turning the shoots into either priceless elixirs or deadly poisons. While the cult relies on this grove for resources, the deep forest is crawling with terrifying spiritual beasts. When Hajin points to the giant chicken currently boiling in their pot, Dongpil drops a massive reality check. The Azure Lotus is actually the weakest monster in the entire grove. Harvesting the deeper areas requires the cult's top-level executives, making this outer garden the only relatively safe zone. Realizing he let a monster slip into this safe zone, Dongpil tearfully apologizes. Hajin waves it off, praising the defensive octagonal wall formation Dongpil built around the perimeter. To lighten the mood, Hajin hands his loyal guard a steaming bowl of mutant chicken stew. Dongpil stares at the massive drumstick, terrified of eating a spiritual beast, but after one sip of the elixir-infused broth, he instantly falls in love and begs for seconds. As they eat, Hajin realizes the demon lord sent him to this death trap deliberately. To survive, he has to master the demonic arts immediately. Meanwhile, Dongpil starts connecting the dots. Formations require years of intense study, yet Hajin recognized his work instantly. Watching the young lord, Dongpil realizes this supposedly ruined boy possesses a hidden genius. Retiring to his room, Hajin decides to break the rules. To gain absolute power quickly, he cannot abandon his past life's signature technique, the Dark Shadow Chi. Instead, he plans to use the foundational true demonic arts as a catalyst to strengthen it, merging the two vastly different philosophies like ink spreading through water. Sitting in deep meditation, he channels swirling red and blue energies, locking himself away for 12 straight days. Outside, Dongpil sweeps the courtyard in nervous anticipation, completely unaware that inside, Hajin is enveloped in a divine, glowing pink aura. The fusion is a flawless success. Hajin opens his glowing eyes, feeling a terrifying rush of demonic energy coursing through his veins. He has successfully birthed a supreme, highly destructive new power, the Dark Shadow demonic art. Eager to test his new limits, Hajin heads deep into the grove with Dongpil. Standing amidst the bamboo, Hajin channels a massive surge of red demonic energy, officially naming his newly created martial art the Dark Shadow demonic art. Dongpil watches in absolute shock as the overwhelming power radiates outward. Suddenly, a ferocious, ape-like Xing beast leaps forward with razor-sharp claws and a terrifying roar. Dongpil braces himself, sweating under the pressure of the sudden assault, before delivering a powerful downward slash that slices through the attacking beast. He stands panting heavily over the fallen creature as blood splatters across the ground. Exhausted and trembling, Dongpil suggests retreating to the city bamboo garden, warning that going deeper is too dangerous. Meanwhile, Hajin stands calmly over several other defeated beasts. Hajin looks down at the dead Xing beast, pointing his blood-stained sword at it. He recalls that these creatures are known to live and hunt in herds, smiling slightly as he questions if 3 beasts are too few to be considered a herd. Suddenly, heavy thumping vibrations echo through the bamboo forest, startling Dongpil. A massive herd of roaring Xing beasts charges out of the forest. Dongpil panics and begs to retreat, but Hajin smiles, acknowledging his physical limits but refusing to back down. Determined to perfect his new martial art, Hajin pushes his body to its absolute limit. His eyes glow with intense red light as he prepares to unleash the Dark Shadow demonic art against the entire herd. Meanwhile, at the Grand Palace, the Demon Lord sits on his throne. A kneeling subordinate reports that the third young lord is currently hunting herds of beasts in the solitary bamboo grove. The Demon Lord finds the news fascinating. He analyzes the secret demonic art texts, noting that none of the standard techniques like blood flame or capturing heavens would truly suit the third young lord. The Demon Lord questions if the subordinate allowed access to other secret texts. Terrified of the breach of protocol, the subordinate bows flat on the floor, begging for death. But the Demon Lord calmly commands the subordinate to rise, revealing that he actually had the authority to access the library. He then asks if the subordinate regrets his decision. The Demon Lord presses further, asking if the subordinate is willing to take full responsibility for the consequences. Sweating under the intense gaze, the subordinate firmly agrees. Satisfied with the answer, the Demon Lord decides to respect the subordinate's decision. The subordinate remains bowed on the floor as the heavy silence of the throne room settles. Chapter 13. Deep inside the deadly solitary bamboo grove, Hajin leaps down from above, his sword flashing as he slashes through 3 roaring ape, a small cut on his cheek. Meanwhile, in the quiet Grand Palace, the Demon Lord pours tea for his first guardian, musing on why a child's fight is far more terrifying than an adult's. He explains that children fight with sheer ignorance, believing any price is worth their honor because they do not know when to stop. In his eyes, a child only becomes a man once they realize their limits and find the appropriate line in battle. Back in the forest, more Xing beasts charge directly at Dongpil. Sensing the danger, Hajin shouts a warning to his guard to watch out. Dongpil's eyes snap open in shock as a massive, fiery blast of red demonic energy sweeps right past him, instantly decimating the beasts in a brutal spray of blood. Hajin tells his guard to stop letting his guard down, dismissing the monsters as mere numbers. Internally, Hajin marvels at how smoothly he can channel the Dark Shadow demonic art, confident he can now venture into the heart of the grove. Suddenly, Hajin's hyper senses detect a blindingly fast presence. He yells for Dongpil to dodge, but before the guard can react, a massive, tiger-striped horse beast blurs forward and kicks Dongpil squarely in the head, sending him flying. Hajin stares in shock at the fanged, horse-like creature. He notes that despite Dongpil exponentially amplifying his inner chi through their recent battles, this beast knocked him out in a single blow, making it the strongest opponent yet. Deciding to use his full strength, Hajin begins channeling his energy, but the beast is too fast. It charges instantly, slamming into Hajin and sending him crashing violently through the bamboo. His sword is knocked away, spinning into the dirt. Bleeding and battered, Hajin tries to brace himself, only to realize in horror that his body won't move. Looking down, he sees his right arm is completely broken. As the drooling beast rears up to trample him, Hajin bitterly regrets letting his guard down in such a dangerous forest. Just as the beast is about to strike, a thrown sword flies through the air, hitting the monster's head with a bright flash. A heavily bleeding Dongpil staggers to his feet, shouting to draw the beast's attention. Hajin desperately warns him that he cannot handle this creature alone, but Dongpil taunts the monster and sprints deep into the bamboo forest. The roaring beast pursues him, leading the creature away. Dongpil leaps high over a hidden pit trap. The beast's momentum carries it forward, and it plunges into the pit, impaled on sharp bamboo stakes. Dongpil catches his breath, hoping the creature is dead, but its eye suddenly snaps open with a purple glow. The tenacious beast roars and begins breaking free. Furious that the monster harmed his young lord, Dongpil wants to behead it, but prioritizes Hajin's safety and runs back. Reunited, Dongpil offers to carry Hajin, but the young lord humorously points out that only his arm is broken, not his legs. 8 months pass, shifting the scene to the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult's Court of Elders. First leader Lee Gunsung enters, looking exhausted. Second leader Jiang offers to take over the guard duty, but Gunsung declines, wanting to keep the subject of their protection comfortable. Guiyang then asks about the patriarch of the Demon Sword family's visit. Gunsung mentions a rumor that they want their eldest son to become the Demon Lord's 8th disciple, noting the family's outstanding loyalty and strength. Guiyang cryptically suggests there might still only be 7 disciples in the end, pointing out that the third young lord, Hajin, is completely out of the running due to his chi blockage and isolation in the solitary bamboo grove. Gunsung warns that this is a dangerous topic, but speculates that Hajin might be trapped in the grove forever. Suddenly, Guiyang slams his teacup onto the table, demanding silence. He warns Gunsung to watch his words, reminding him that the master of the Court of Elders specifically sent Dongpil to the grove because he was the most suitable. Their tense conversation is interrupted by a nervous servant sliding the door open to report that the third leader has returned. Guiyang, shocked, orders him in immediately. Dongpil steps into the room carrying a travel bag, offering a formal greeting. The two leaders are instantly paralyzed with shock. An incredibly heavy, dark, and ominous murderous aura rolls off Dongpil, so intense that it cannot be concealed. Staring in disbelief, the elders sweat under the crushing pressure, terrified and wondering what monstrous events transpired in the solitary bamboo grove over the last 8 months to change him so drastically. Demon Divine Cult are left sweating in the wake of Ma Dongpil's crushing aura, but the man himself is completely unfazed by the tension he just caused. Packing a massive bundle of green cave pine tea leaves, Dongpil politely declines his senior's offer for a drink, citing his strict orders from the third young lord. As he walks out the gates, the first and second leaders can only watch in awe. They realize the solitary bamboo grove is forging him into an absolute monster, and they can only hope he survives the process. Back in the dense, purple-stalked forest, Dongpil moves with terrifying speed. Leaping gracefully through the bamboo, he marvels at how light his body feels, his martial arts having leveled up drastically over the last 8 months of pure survival. But his confidence is cut short when he hears heavy, uniform footsteps approaching. Bracing for a high-level beast, he reaches for his sword, only to freeze in utter disbelief. Strolling through the deadly forest is Hajin, casually dragging a massive tiger-striped Lushu beast by a thick rope. Covered in blood but looking completely bored, Hajin explains he just went out for a walk and killed the apex predator because it annoyed him during their last encounter. As Hajin cheerfully orders Dongpil to wash the pots for a horse meat dinner, the loyal guard finally snaps. Pointing at Hajin's perfectly fine right arm, Dongpil begs him to take off the cast. Hajin sheepishly scratches his head, flashing back to the last 8 months of ruthlessly exploiting his guard to make his bed, hand-feed him, and wipe him down. He realizes he might have milked the fake injury a bit too much. Later that night, while Dongpil scrubs dishes in a wooden tub, Hajin meditates on a nearby rock, enveloped in a swirling, vibrant blue spiritual aura. Watching him, Dongpil is amazed that a boy who once suffered from a crippling chi blockage can now solo a Lushu. He resolves to push his own limits to keep up with his monstrous lord. Suddenly, Hajin vanishes, reappearing silently right behind Dongpil and scaring the life out of him. But Hajin isn't here to joke around. He drops a massive reality check. They are running out of time. The solitary bamboo grove is about to become a literal death trap. Hajin explains that the heavily concentrated spiritual chi doesn't just mutate the beasts in bamboo, it aggressively alters human bodies. He points out their abnormal, massive muscle gains over the last 8 months, noting that such physical development is impossible under normal circumstances. Unwrapping his cast, Hajin reveals his broken and dislocated bone healed in a single week, and his Lushu injuries vanished in 2 hours. He warns that this hyper-regeneration is actually fatal. If the body keeps healing after a wound closes, the excess flesh will uncontrollably mutate until the person literally explodes from the overwhelming energy. In 2 to 3 months, the chi will become too dense for any human to survive. Panicking, Dongpil reminds him they cannot leave without the Demon Lord's explicit permission, but Hajin just smirks, dropping his cast in the dirt. He reveals the Demon Lord never gave him a timeline. Sending him here was actually granting a request. Hajin has no intention of leaving empty-handed. Pointing toward a massive pillar of blue energy erupting in the distance, he declares they are heading straight into the heart of the grove. They are going to hunt down 2 more beasts and harvest the ultimate spiritual bamboo before their time runs out. Meanwhile, miles away in a luxurious palace bathhouse, the 4th young lord, Hong Yui-moon, is losing his mind. Smoking a pipe while female servants wash his arms, Yu-moon is paralyzed by a recent, terrifying meeting with the heavenly demon. In a flashback, the imposing master sat on his grand throne, fully aware of Yui-moon's plot to challenge the youngest disciple. But the master didn't punish him. He coldly encouraged the brutal succession war, treating his children like dogs fighting for scraps. Then, the heavenly demon casually dropped a bombshell. The 3rd disciple is doing exceptionally well in the deadly grove and will be summoned back shortly. The news shatters Yui-moon's reality. He cannot comprehend how his target survived a severe chi blockage, lethal poison, and 8 months in a forest that kills peak masters. Snapping back to the present, Moon explodes out of the bath in a violent rage, splashing water everywhere and sending his servants screaming in terror. Gritting his teeth with pure murderous intent, the fourth young lord vows that the second his brother returns, he will turn him into a corpse. Chapter 15. Back in his quarters, Hajin drops a bundle of freshly gathered supplies onto the table, handing Dongpil the Hajin stares in shock, recognizing a leopard-like creature among them. Dongpil identifies it as a Mengji, the apex predator of the forest with the second highest spiritual qi, expressing deep concern that such a powerful creature has been killed. He points out that the strongest beast in the grove is also nearby, a large, dark purple snake with 2 tails. Hajin confirms it is the sundered serpent, reputed to be the strongest beast in the entire grove despite its small size. Walking past the dead serpent, Hajin observes that it does not appear particularly strong or venomous, agreeing with Dongpil that the condition of the corpses is highly unusual. Kneeling beside the dead Mengji, Hajin notes that the beasts appear to have been defeated simultaneously without sustaining any visible injuries. He also observes that the spiritual bamboo, which should be thriving and thick near the heart of the forest, is completely withered and dead. It is as if a massive, unseen force simply drained the life force out of the entire area in one fell swoop. Suddenly, Hajin pauses. A cool breeze sweeps through the dead stalks, quickly intensifying into a violent, swirling wind. While Dongpil only feels a light breeze and looks on in confusion, Hajin's eyes widen as he detects a terrifying, unnatural energy radiating directly from the heart of the grove. Knowing exactly what he has to do, Hajin turns back and orders his loyal guard to stay behind no matter what happens. Before Dongpil can even protest or process the command, Hajin dashes straight into the swirling, energy-laden wind, charging directly toward the source of the lethal disturbance. Miles away in the luxurious quarters of the Grand Palace, cult leader Li Qiansang rests with his eyes closed while his female attendants carefully massage his legs. But the quiet peace is shattered when a massive, shadowy jackal with glowing purple eyes materializes out of thin air in the dark room. The cult leader calmly addresses the beast, noting they had no reason to cross paths again, just before the jackal dissipates in a violent burst of dark energy that violently throws the attendants across the room. Completely unfazed by the blast, Li Qiansang summons his first guardian. An older man, with a top knot and a goatee, wearing a gray robe, kneels respectfully before him. The cult leader asks if any other guardians entered the heart of the solitary bamboo grove during his solitary training. The first guardian denies any unauthorized entry. Pouring himself a drink from an ornate bottle, the cult leader brings up the third guardian, noting he accompanied the third leader. The first guardian confirms this, praising the third guardian's talent and experience despite his youth, explaining why he was chosen to serve the third young lord. Taking a sip from his cup, the cult leader contemplates the 8 months that have passed, reasoning that, even with an opportunity, the third leader's growth would be limited. He then asks for the current date, and the first guardian replies that it is 1 day before the full moon. A sinister smirk spreads across the cult leader's face. He realizes the impending full moon is exactly why the shadowy jackal manifested before him. As the 2 female attendants recover and resume massaging his legs, apologizing for the interruption, the cult leader stares blankly ahead, silently questioning if the third young lord is foolish enough to walk to his death out of pure greed, or if he will somehow survive the impossible trial. Back in the deadly forest, Hajin is fighting a losing battle. He struggles to advance against a terrifying, glowing blue wind that threatens to completely crush him. The oppressive chi grows exponentially stronger with every single step, making it nearly impossible to even walk straight. Shielding his face from the intense pressure, Hajin spots a traditional pavilion in the distance. He realizes this overwhelming energy feels exactly like the death-like aura the cult leader emitted during their very first meeting. Pushed back by the sheer force of the wind, Hajin analyzes the energy, noting that while the wind lacks malicious intent, its raw strength is as dangerous as Li Qiansang himself. However, he also senses a potential reward hidden within the danger. The sheer force of the wind causes Hajin to violently cough up blood, proving that his newly forged demonic energy is simply not enough to protect his internal organs from the crushing weight. Unable to withstand the pressure much longer, he pulls out his ultimate trump card, the small bamboo container holding the turbid elimination herbs. He downs the harsh medicine, and instantly, the protective layer of demonic energy surrounding his body dissolves into a green mist. As his demonic energy fades away, Hajin feels his body become incredibly light. The oppressive, glowing wind suddenly passes harmlessly right through his physical form. By strategically suppressing his demonic arts, he has successfully activated the Dark Shadow Art's Dark God Phantom, the supreme stealth technique that made him the world's greatest assassin in his past life. Becoming completely translucent, Hajin walks effortlessly through the deadly storm, his ghostly hand brushing past a bamboo stalk as he moves forward unseen. Back at the entrance, Dongpil notices the wind and demonic energy suddenly weakening, looking around in absolute shock as his lord vanishes into thin air. Fully stealthed and unaffected by the crushing pressure, Hajin strides confidently toward the heart of the grove, calculating that he has just enough time to reach the center before the herbal effects wear off. But as he moves swiftly through the dense bamboo, his foot suddenly catches on something hidden on the ground. The unexpected obstacle sends the legendary assassin flying through the air before he crashes down hard into the dirt. Pushing himself up onto his hands and knees, Hajin groans in pain and fumes with intense frustration, cursing the demonic forest and humiliated that he just tripped over a rock while using his ultimate movement technique. But as he looks back, his eyes widen in disbelief as he notices a small, yellow furry ear twitch and a tail wag nearby. It wasn't a rock. Curled up asleep on the forest floor, letting out a soft Q sound, is a small, cute, yellow fox-like creature, leaving Hajin staring at the clever-looking beast in complete bewilderment. Chapter 17. Hajin stares down at the tiny, sleeping yellow fox that just tripped him in the heart of the solitary bamboo grove. Remembering Dongpil's grave warning that the deep seriously wonders if this harmless-looking furball is actually the apex predator. He tries to keep his guard up, but the moment the creature's ears twitch, the legendary assassin's serious demeanor completely melts into a goofy grin. He desperately wants to pet it, but quickly leaps back, realizing he almost fell for its adorable trap. Shaking off the distraction, he leaves the sleeping fox behind and pushes deeper into the grove until he hits a dead end. Towering before him is a massive wall of glowing purple bamboo stalks. Placing his hand against the glowing wood, Hajin is instantly hit by an overwhelming wave of spiritual chi. He has finally found the most concentrated energy in the entire forest. Knowing his recovering body cannot handle too much raw power at once, he wisely decides to harvest just one stalk. But before he starts chopping, he spots a single purple bamboo shoot growing nearby. Figuring its pure energy can be consumed directly without needing purification, he squats down and yanks it from the earth with all his might. The sudden noise twitches the sleeping fox's ears in the distance, and as the shoot is ripped free, the creature's eye snaps open, glowing with a fiery, cosmic light. Unaware of his new audience, Hajin greedily eats the raw shoot, but instead of a massive surge of power, he only feels a faint warmth in his chest. Disappointed by the lackluster snack, he draws his sword, deciding he has to cut down a full-size stalk to get the energy he actually needs. He swings his blade with full force, but the steel bounces off the purple wood with a bright flash, failing to leave even a single scratch. Dumbfounded, he strikes again and again, only to realize the spiritual bamboo is literally as hard as steel. Furious that a mere plant is mocking his strength, Hajin takes a low stance and channels a blazing red sword aura into his blade. Unleashing his devastating moonslash technique, he slices cleanly through the massive stalk, sending it crashing to the forest floor with a heavy thud. Kneeling beside his prize, he marvels at the sheer density of the wood, only to sense something right behind him. He leaps back in comical shock to find the yellow fox sitting there, innocently tilting its head. Frustrated that he didn't even notice the creature approach, Hajin questions the strange little guy as it suddenly hops right onto his lap. His hypersensation tells him the beast harbors no bloodlust, so he lowers his guard and reaches out to pet it. The second his hand gets close, the adorable fox chomps down hard on his finger, sending Hajin screaming in agony as blood splatters from the sudden bite. Just then, Dongpil arrives at the clearing. The giant guard is absolutely stunned to see the massive spiritual bamboo cut down, marveling at the terrifyingly smooth slice left by Hajin's sword aura. As Hajin stretches and complains about the exhausting work, Dongpil spots the tiny fox. Hajin explains the ungrateful furball just bit him, but as he looks down at his hand, he is shocked to see the wound has completely vanished. He realizes the pure spiritual chi must have instantly healed his torn flesh. Hearing that the beast dared to harm his lord, Dongpil flies into a comical rage, chasing the barking fox around the clearing, while Hajin sighs at his loyal guard picking a fight with a small animal. Calling an end to the nonsense, Hajin orders Dongpil to come over. Since the massive bamboo stalk is way too heavy to carry back to their courtyard, he decides to purify it right there on the spot. Dongpil agrees to stand guard as Hajin prepares his boundless technique. Channeling bright blue energy into his hands, Hajin envelops the bamboo in swirling currents of chi, instantly purging the surrounding air of all impurities. Watching from the sidelines, Dongpil is left in absolute awe, but that awe quickly turns into deep suspicion. Sweat drips down the giant's face as he realizes Hajin's mastery goes far beyond just knowing a unique technique. The young lord possesses a profound, flawless understanding of chi control. The more Dongpil watches him, the more he realizes Hajin does not move or act like a youth in his 20s. He carries the heavy, experienced aura of a master who has lived and fought for decades. Completely focused, Hajin places his glowing hand directly onto the bamboo stalk. The corrupted energy inside the wood rapidly decays, crumbling into dark ash as a massive, violent vortex of blue energy erupts around him, leaving Dongpil completely paralyzed by the sheer scale of his power. Chapter 18. As the violent vortex of blue energy finally dissipates into the night air, Hajin exhales a heavy breath, wiping the sweat from his face. Beside him sits a massive cylindrical container filled to the brim. Action is a complete success, yielding the purest spiritual bamboo sap in the entire forest. Dongpil approaches with a wide grin, praising his young lord for securing such a priceless elixir. But instead of hoarding the treasure for himself, Hajin casually shoves the massive container toward his loyal guard, telling him to drink up. Dongpil recoils in absolute shock, feeling completely unworthy of consuming something so valuable. But Hajin isn't taking no for an answer. He reminds the giant warrior of the bond they've forged in this hellish forest, finally compromising by offering him half of the container. Overcome with emotion, tears well up in Dongpil's eyes. He drops to one knee, bowing deeply as he swears a dramatic, lifelong oath to protect Hajin until his dying breath. Exasperated by the sudden theatrics, Hajin waves his hands, begging the man to just drink the damn sap. When Dongpil keeps rambling about his eternal loyalty, Hajin loses his patience, forcefully shoving the glowing container directly into the giant's face and yelling at him to swallow. But as Dongpil chokes down the glowing liquid, the shadows around them begin to shift. Hajin suddenly freezes, his expression turning razor sharp. He warns his coughing guard that something is coming. From the dense bamboo, a massive, muscular snow leopard with glowing eyes prowls into view. Above them, a flock of monstrous birds takes flight into the moonlit sky. Dongpil realizes, in absolute horror, that every single beast in the solitary bamboo grove is crowding around them, drawn by the overwhelming spiritual energy. Without a second of hesitation, Hajin lifts the massive container and chugs the remaining elixir himself. He quickly confirms that Dongpil has the grove's layout memorized, then flashes a confident smile, ordering an immediate retreat. But as they prepare to scramble, Hajin spots the tiny yellow fox, still sleeping peacefully on the dirt, completely oblivious to the surrounding nightmare. Knowing he can't just leave the creature behind after it followed him all this way, he scoops up the furball and tosses it to Dongpil. He orders his guard to carry the beast and run, declaring that he will hold the line against the horde. Dongpil desperately tries to argue, wanting to stay and fight beside his master, but Hajin is done negotiating. Screaming at his guard to listen, Hajin slams his fist into the ground with devastating force. The impact unleashes a massive, swirling shockwave of energy that violently blows Dongpil backward, forcing him out of the danger zone. Tumbling through the air with the wide-eyed fox clutched tightly to his chest, Dongpil can only marvel at the terrifying martial arts his young lord just displayed. As Dongpil flies to safety, he screams a desperate warning. A massive, three-headed bird beast swoops down from behind, its razor-sharp talons extended for the kill. But Hajin's eyes glow with a deadly red light. Unleashing his past-life ultimate technique, the heaven-splitting triple slash, he cleanly severs the giant bird in a blinding flash of red energy. He smirks, reveling in the freedom to finally use his true assassin skills without having to hide them for the sake of his demonic arts training. Miles away, high above on a snowy cliff, the cult leader watches the slaughter unfold from the luxurious demonic judgment pavilion. Observing the battle, he recognizes the yellow fox as the powerful entity known as Jackal, wondering why the owner of the grove would abandon its spiritual ground. But his focus quickly shifts to his son, watching Hajin ruthlessly massacre a pack of monstrous ape beasts with glowing red energy, driving his sword through one and stepping heavily on the head of another. The cult leader realizes the boy has completely changed. The essence radiating from the third young lord is no longer weakness, it is pure, unadulterated death. Pouring himself a drink, the demon lord smiles, highly satisfied that he forced the boy into this deadly trial. He addresses the jackal, asking what it saw in the third. Meanwhile, as Dongpil runs through the forest, the yellow fox in his arms opens its golden eyes. Reflected in its pupils is the glowing image of Hajin fighting, prompting Hajin to suddenly realize something with a quiet, knowing, aha. Down in the blood-soaked grove, Hajin stands victorious over a pile of slaughtered apes, but the real threat has just arrived. A terrifying snow leopard, massive in size and radiating alpha energy, steps out of the shadows. Hajin casually asks if it's the leader of the grove, but the beast answers with a deafening roar, lunging forward with blinding speed. Barely dodging the massive claws, Hajin complains about the rude greeting. Realizing the beast is locked onto him, he executes a rapid footwork technique called Grasshopper Ascension, combining it with his demonic arts to launch a devastating head-on red energy slash. The attack collides violently with the leopard, triggering a massive explosion that kicks up a thick cloud of dust and debris. Landing gracefully, Hajin sheathes his sword, actually disappointed by how weak the alpha predator seems. Wiping the sweat from his face, he taunts the beast to stop hiding in the smoke, but he severely underestimates his prey. A menacing silhouette with glowing yellow eyes rises from the dust, and before Hajin can even react, the beast accelerates to an impossible speed. It slams into him with crushing force, sending the legendary assassin flying backward until he crashes hard into the steel-like purple bamboo. The impact shatters the thick stalks, leaving Hajin face down in the dirt, his sword knocked away. As three giant leopards emerge from the shadows to surround him, growling for the kill, Hajin groans in pain. But as he slowly opens his eyes, they burn with a menacing, demonic red light, and he glares up at the oversized cats, asking them if they really have a death wish. Chapter 19. Hajin lies in the shattered bamboo, surrounded by three giant leopards, gone, replaced by a burning, demonic red glare. Realizing that taking another direct hit from these massive predators could send him straight to the underworld, he rips off his ruined shirt and prepares to fight his way out. But as he channels his aura, he notices a massive problem. The overwhelming spiritual chi of the grove is actively diluting his demonic arts, weakening his overall output. Worse, he is completely out of the turbid elimination herbs needed for his stealth techniques. He is forced into a straight-up brawl against predators that hit as hard as peak martial arts masters. A leopard ambushes him from behind, leaving deep, bloody claw marks across his back. Hajin retaliates with a brutal punch to its face, but as he knocks away another beast, he realizes the pack is only growing. Fighting them one by one is a guaranteed death sentence. Deciding to end it all at once, he compensates for his weakened state by simply forcing more raw power into his technique. He slams his fist into the earth, unleashing his devastating explosive mountain blast. A massive shockwave of crimson energy erupts outward, violently blasting the entire pack away in a blinding flash. Miles away at the edge of the forest, Dongpil finally bursts through the exit gate, panting heavily with the tiny yellow fox tucked safely inside his shirt. He sets the furball down just as a massive tremor shakes the ground, leaving the giant warrior sweating with worry over what his young lord is doing in there. Back inside the grove, Hajin is paying the heavy price for that massive attack. His legs feel like lead as he stumbles through the dark woods, completely lost. Leaning against a bamboo stalk to catch his breath, he notices something terrifying. The wood is completely dry. Every single stalk in the area has been drained of its moisture. Before he can process what that means, a massive red tail slithers up behind him. It is the sundered serpent, a beast infamous for causing severe droughts. The giant snake lunges, wrapping its thick coils tightly around Hajin's arms and torso. The pressure is bone-crushing, and its corrosive touch instantly begins rusting Hajin's sword. Pinned to the ground and unable to break free, Hajin can only watch in horror as the serpent opens its massive jaws to bite his face off. But right before its fangs connect, a blade pierces straight through the monster's skull from above. Dongpil lands heavily, flinging the dead snake aside. Hajin smiles weakly, joking that his guard's dramatic entrance almost gave him a heart attack, but he quickly scolds the man for coming back. Dongpil simply replies that a guard never abandons his lord. He pulls the exhausted young lord to his feet, promising to get him out safely. But their heartwarming reunion is instantly shattered by a deafening rumble. The massive horde of giant leopards did not just survive the blast, they followed Dongpil all the way back. With the exit still 2 kilometers away, running is no longer an option. Dongpil immediately offers to stay behind as bait, but Hajin is done losing people. Igniting his red aura once more, he declares they are leaving together. Refusing to die as someone else's disposable tool like he did in his past life, Hajin charges headfirst into the horde. He brutally punches his way through the beasts, driven by an absolute obsession to survive and become untouchably strong. But the sheer numbers overwhelm him. A leopard manages to slash him across the exact same spot on his back, sending him crashing hard into the dirt. As a beast steps up for the killing blow, Hajin glares up through the blood on his face. Fueled by pure spite, he forces himself up, unleashing a blazing aura of demonic energy. He fires off a second explosive mountain blast, obliterating the immediate wave of predators in a bloody shockwave. The blast clears the area, but it leaves Hajin completely empty. Panting heavily, he leans his entire weight against Dongpil, casually asking for a piggyback ride the rest of the way. But Dongpil does not move. Sweating bullets, the giant guard stammers that carrying him is going to be a problem. Hajin looks up, and his heart sinks. An entirely new pack of leopards has silently surrounded them, and this one is led by a terrifying, three-eyed alpha beast that dwarfs the rest. Dongpil steps in front of his lord, insisting that this time, he really has to be the bait. Hajin curses in absolute despair, realizing they are completely out of options. But just as the alpha prepares to pounce, the tiny yellow fox quietly trots past them. Completely unfazed by the giant predators, the mysterious creature stops and stares at a grand, glowing wooden gate hidden deep in the bamboo, silently offering the cornered duo one last, desperate way out. Alpha Leopard. Hajin is suddenly overwhelmed by a traumatic flashback to the brutal sword strike that ended his past life. Gritting his teeth as sweat pours down his face, he refuses to let this second chance end the exact same way. Dongpil desperately begs his young lord to run while he acts as bait, but before either of them can make a move, the impossible happens. The terrifying alpha predator suddenly whimpers, cowering in absolute terror. The tiny yellow fox trots past them and steps between the cornered duo and the deadly pack, radiating a blinding blue and yellow aura. Baffled by the creature's sudden display of dominance, Hajin asks the furball what it is doing. In response, the fox's eyes flash with raw energy, and it summons a catastrophic pillar of lightning directly from the sky, completely obliterating the threat in a blinding flash of white destruction. When morning finally breaks over the peaceful sunlit forest, Hajin wakes up to a wet tongue repeatedly licking his face. Groaning in the dirt next to an unconscious Dongpil, Hajin wonders if he actually died again and crossed over to the underworld. But the searing pain radiating through his battered muscles quickly confirms he is very much alive. Before he can even process his miraculous survival, the glowing fox happily pounces right onto his chest. Completely misreading the situation and his savior's intentions, Hajin panics. He flails wildly, screaming at his unconscious guard to wake up and save him from being eaten alive by the mysterious glowing furball. Miles away, deep within the snowy mountains, the political heart of the heavenly demon divine cult is in full motion. Inside the massive, ornate throne room, rows of high-ranking cult members bow deeply to their supreme leader, the terrifying demon lord Li Qiansang. The grand assembly begins with routine financial reports, and an official notes that the expected expenses for the upcoming Mara festival have spiked to 57,000 yang, a full 12,000 more than last year. The demon lord immediately questions the exorbitant expense, pointing out that their special strike forces are currently deployed, meaning attendance will be low. So Yunsim, the internal enlightenment facility master, steps forward to explain that 4 of the 7 founding families are attending, with the demon sword family as the key member. She argues that they must shower these prestigious guests with wealth to properly display the cult's dignity, but the demon lord coldly shuts her down. He declares that the cult's dignity is expressed solely through his absolute power, not through throwing money at subordinates, and strictly orders the budget to be slashed. So Yunsim bows deeply, apologizing and promising a revised proposal by tomorrow noon. With the progress reports concluded, the Demon Lord moves on to evaluating his successor candidates. After confirming the first young lord is still training inside the third Guardian Demon Hall, he calls upon the second, Guan Pyong. Stepping forward with absolute confidence, Guan Pyong boldly claims that closed-door training is currently meaningless for him, as martial arts is already ingrained into his everyday life. The surrounding crowd whispers in shock at his sheer arrogance, but the Demon Lord surprisingly praises his self-awareness, instantly elevating the second standing in the room. The fourth young lord is evaluated next, but he receives a brutal reality check. The Demon Lord harshly points out that his progress is far too slow, and true mastery will be nearly impossible for him to achieve. Bowing submissively, the fourth accepts the heavy insult, but internally resolves to secure his future through expanding his political alliances, rather than relying on raw strength. The evaluations continue with the fifth young lady, Ju Seoyun. The Demon Lord praises her recent progress and drops a massive bombshell, ordering her to accompany the Elder Court Master after the meeting, and granting her the rare privilege of choosing one of the legendary 10 great demonic arts. This unprecedented reward sends shockwaves through the Grand Hall, forcing her rival siblings to frantically recalculate their political strategies as they sweat over her sudden rise in favor, while others whisper about the absent sixth sibling who is currently attending the Mara festival with the Patriarch. But the atmosphere instantly turns suffocating when the Demon Lord shifts his heavy gaze to the youngest sibling, Che Yeoman. Trembling violently under his oppressive stare, the seventh young lady apologizes as he coldly criticizes her weak health. He reminds her that the demonic faction is no place for spoiled children, then pours himself a drink and chillingly asks if she is afraid of death. Sweating and on the verge of tears, she stammers a desperate denial. The Demon Lord's voice echoes through the massive hall, reminding every single disciple that he has never taught them to rest. If they truly desire power, they must completely shatter their limits. Setting his drink down firmly, the Demon Lord notes with a sharp glare that the third is late, Right on cue, the heavy wooden doors of the Grand Hall are pushed open by the royal guards. The herald loudly announces the arrival of the third young lord, Seor Yang. The entire room freezes in absolute disbelief. The rival siblings gasp and whisper in shock, completely stunned to see the brother they thought was permanently crippled and stripped of his martial prowess, striding confidently down the red carpet. Having survived the hellish solitary bamboo grove months ahead of schedule, Hajin stops before the throne. Unfazed by the suffocating pressure of the room, he looks directly up into his terrifying father's eyes. Wearing a fearless, confident smirk, the legendary assassin casually greets the supreme ruler, telling the demon